Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal, Jordan the Lion, and I am excited today. I have wanted to come to Natchitoches for quite a while. Today we made it happen. There's a lot of history here. I mean, Louisiana Purchase history, some basketball Joe Dumars history, the death of Jim Croce, but what I wanted to do today is Steel Magnolias. I thought that movie was great. I thought it was hilarious. When I was in high school, we had to read the play, and it's very well written and very set in this era, like this area anyway. And I want to go see the houses, so that's what we're doing today. Hope you guys enjoy it. Days with Jordan the Lion, it begins right now. Our first location would be fitting to go to Malin, Drum, and Shelby's house, the Eatonton house, which is now a bed and breakfast. I had contacted them to try and stay here, and then because I had jaw, they don't allow pets, and so I asked him if I could pay to tour the inside and show you guys a little bit of the inside, but I didn't get a response, and it doesn't look like anybody is here. Maybe they're not open right now because of this is Mardi Gras when I'm filming this. But look at this place. This is so cool for me. This is where they hold Shelby's wedding, and we see the very beginning of the movie is right here because Drum is in the backyard trying to remove the pigeons. He's up there shooting pigeons and everything, so check this out. When you see Weezer the first time, one of Shirley MacLaine's best roles, Shelby and Malin are coming out that door right there to come to Truvy's to get their hair done for the wedding, and they accidentally open the door and see Weezer out here struggling with her dog because her dog's hair is now falling out because of Drum. It's developed a nervous condition, so we see her out here struggling with the dog, and she comes up here and knocks on the door, and Malin and Shelby had went out the back, so she's screaming for Drum, and Drum opens the door, and Weezer's right here fighting with her dog, trying to tie her dog to the pole right here. And he says, "You look like hammered crap, Weezer." The lines in this are just so well written, so great. And she said, "I have such a bone to pick with you, Drum Eatonton. You are making my dog's hair fall out. Whitey Black says his hair's falling out because of all this." Drum says, "Weezer, Whitey Black is a moron. I don't even think he has opposable thumbs." He goes, "You know, you're just gonna have to deal with it," basically, and he closes the door on her. So she ends up just tying the dog up here and storming inside. But what's cool is if you look in through the windows, you can see a little bit of our filming locations. Check this out. The first time we see Shelby is Shelby coming down that staircase right there. And if you look, there's a table right here off to the right. That's where Drum puts his gun down when he goes to the bathroom. And when Shelby and Malin are leaving, Malin picks up the gun and puts it in that drawer so he can't find it. And then Shelby comes down the stairs again, and that's when they go to open this door and see Weezer. Kind of cool to see a little bit of the inside. I mean, this house is featured throughout the entire movie. And the first time we see Annelle, played by Daryl Hannah, she's actually standing on that corner in front of that gate looking at all the festivities because all the trucks are showing up to start decorating, so she's standing right there on her way to Truvy's for her job interview. So from Annelle's perspective, we see all the trucks and everything lining up over here, and even her future boyfriend is pulling up because he's the bartender with the red truck. He pulls up right there. If you've seen the movie a couple of times, then you realize, oh yeah, that's him pulling in for the party at the very beginning. So the family that owns this isn't the Eatontons, it's the Taylors. And they have the gates open. That's kind of why I'm looking through the windows and stuff. I feel like they'd be okay with it. And my friend Joanna Cassidy used to live on this street a couple of houses down, and she said she knows these people and said they're very kind. Wow, take a look at that. You can see that basketball hoop in the background of some of the shots. There's the pool back there. So our shot is, we see Drum out here shooting at the pigeons up in these trees. pretty crazy. And we see all the people coming and going from that door over there. So right over here to the right of us is where the table was. Like, it would have been like right off camera to the right. That's where they're all having the night before the surgery, before they're doing the transplant. Malin and Shelby are doing the kidney transplant, and they're all making jokes about transplants, making Drum upset. And if you went through that doorway right there and to the right, that was Malin's bedroom that we see her come out of. And that's also that's the way that we see Drum run through when he's got to go to the bathroom when they say the coffee kicked in. So inside the Eatonton home. So there's the pool that we see. Actually, we see Weezer over here. Drum's got all of his gun shells and everything, his blanks right there, and he's loading up his gun, and she grabs them all and throws them in the pool. He says, "Weezer, I don't want to have to kill you." So cool to see this house where the wedding took place. All the dancing and the tent would have been set up right here. So cool. I want to come back and stay here so bad because I want to show off the inside. I want to show how good the pictures and everything look great of Shelby's room. I want to show for everybody, so everybody will want to come stay here. Historic house. So cool. And there's inside the kitchen. We see some kitchen shots in the movie as well. And we gotta show the carport. That's where they serve the armadillo cake. Weezer serving the cake to Drum and gives him the butt of the armadillo. So one of my other favorite scenes here at the house is at the end of the wedding. Weezer and Clary are walking out here arm in arm, and that's when Weezer says, "Come on, Clary, walk me home." Clary says, "But my car's parked over here. You live over here, just couple of hundred yards. What's the big deal?" Weezer goes, "Just walk me home. You watch the news. You know what can happen." She's like, "Weezer, you are getting crazy. The older you get, the crazier you get." And as they're walking down here, Weezer says, "Yeah, well, the older you get, the uglier you get." So Weezer's house is right over here. Because she is the neighbor. Remember, she's arguing with Drum when she comes back here about the shells and everything. In the pool, she sees some of the magnolias from the tree, and she says, "Are those my magnolias?" And he says, "The judge has not decided whose tree that is yet, Weezer." So her house was right here. You never really see it, but this is the house they allude to. It's the Lemmy house. And it's funny because she says, "The only reason people are nice to me is because I have more money than God." I want to see if they actually used the back garden here for that scene with Clary and Weezer. They sure did. This is the fountain. You see it over Weezer's shoulder. They put a different bench out here of some sort, and you can even see some of the houses in the background and everything. But this is after Shelby's funeral, and Malin was out there upset and said she was so upset, she was so mad, she wishes she could hit something to make it feel as bad as she did. And Clary held Weezer and said, "Here, Malin, hit this. We'll sell shirts that say, 'I hit Weezer Boudreaux.'" So Weezer's pissed. This is after the funeral and everything, and Weezer's sitting out here on this bench by herself, and Clary sees her and comes walking up to her and goes to sit on the bench, and they start shoving each other with their elbows, elbowing each other like little kids, and then fighting over the seat on the bench. And Weezer pushes Clary off onto the ground, and she says, "Clary, you are evil and you must be destroyed." Clary says, "Come on, Weezer, you know I love you more than my pocketbook." Said, "We needed a laugh. Come on, you're the easiest target." So that would have been right here with that in the background, and the house right there in the background. You can even see the brick wall and everything as well. That's a great scene. Here's another house that's featured briefly, and Annelle's walking to Trudy's. You can see her walking right past here. So here we are at what would have been Truvy's house. First time we see it's when Annelle is coming for her job interview, and there's a Truvy sign right here, the beauty shop. See a lot of this place. This is where Dolly Parton lives, and she runs her beauty shop out of that back room back there. See this a handful of times. I'm trying to give you a couple of different scenarios. One is right up here when Annelle is in charge of Christmas decorations, and she's out there with her boyfriend on the ladder putting up all the Christmas decorations. I mean, it's just completely loaded right there. Now, that's when she's got the music going, all kinds of crazy stuff. Sammy turns it off because Truvy's here, and that's the front door they always go in. Malin and Shelby, everybody that comes here the first time goes in that front door. But while they're here putting the Christmas decorations, Shelby says, "Miss Weezer." And all of a sudden you see Weezer coming from over here with her dog. And she says, "I ran into one of your friends." She goes, "Oh?" "Owen Jenkins." "Oh." She goes, "Do you remember him?" "He remembers you." "Of course I remember Owen Jenkins. He had the longest nose hairs in the free world." So we also see, we'll go back here, get a view from the side, because when they're taking out the trash, that's the view we have of them bringing it out to the curb. Once Annelle is hired by Truvy, they bring the trash out because Truvy's son gets on his motorcycle. He lives up here, and he gets on his motorcycle and takes off. So Truvy and Annelle are picking up the trash cans, and they're walking them towards us. Now their backyard was also used because even though that was the beauty shop and everything, Truvy's very involved in the community, and she's coloring Easter eggs for the Easter hunt, and she's bringing them out to load up in her car that was actually on the other side of this garage during the time of filming. So they were all actually in the backyard filling up the trunk with the Easter eggs when Weezer comes running through the backyard screaming to Malin about Drum firing his gun and everything, and that's when she goes up to Annelle and says, "I know everybody in this town and I don't know you. Are you married?" And Annelle has to finally confess the story of, she doesn't know legally whether she's married or not because the guy took all of her stuff and the police are looking for him and everything, so crazy story. But this is also where Shelby has her first diabetic fit. That's the first time we see there's something different, or something that is different about her while she's getting her hair done for the wedding inside the beauty shop. That's when she starts to basically convulse, and Malin has to go get her some juice and give her juice, and they have to calm her down and everything. And since the Truvy sign was originally right here, then we see Daryl Hannah walking from over there, and you can see one of the telephone poles was there at the time. So what you'll notice since filming, when we had a shot up the driveway right here, the awnings that used to be coming off there are gone, and that's a different garage. The one that they had was a single window up top. It was just different. And I thought it was different too, because I'm going, how would they have gotten the car behind this, like up through there behind it, the way they have the car for the Easter eggs when they're loading the Easter eggs? So that's why. Now our next location's the only one not really in town. It's about 20 to 25 minutes outside of town. We're going to St. Augustine's Church. So here we have St. Augustine Church. This was the church of Shelby and Jackson's wedding. We don't ever see the outside like this. Let me show you how we see it. You do get a shot like this when it's time for the wedding. Drum has shot those crossbows up into the tree and let off the fireworks, so he can't hear anything. So Shelby comes out here and he's standing right out here, and she goes, Daddy, it's time. He turns around and he goes, it's time. So they come walking in towards us to start the wedding. So these are the doors that we came in from, and I was surprised there was another set of doors originally right here that Clary opens. But we see her tell Shelby it's time. You see that staircase right there. And then Shelby, of course, walks out and gets her dad like I just showed you. So they come walking in, and the doors, maybe they were made for the movie, the doors open and you see this room, although different because, of course, Shelby has used her signature colors, blush and bashful, pink and pink, and has a pink carpet going straight up the center made especially for her. So we see them walking down the aisle towards us like this. And what's kind of funny is that as they're walking, Drum looks over in a booth over here and sees Weezer and growls at her. So this is where the wedding takes place. It looks like in the movie they added a couple of extra steps up here. And of course, like I said, the whole back was draped in pink and the pink carpet and everything. So she comes up here and meets Jackson at the front. And the preacher says, "Who gives this woman to be wed? Her mother and I do." And they get married. And you do see that staircase right there. They would have had like the wall basically in between the two staircases going across with that other set of doors. But when Shelby's walking in, you can still see that staircase right there. Pretty cool to see this.
Now this one, I don't remember from the movie. They mention it, but you never see it. So either it was in the deleted scenes or, you know, they filmed it and didn't show it in the movie, because this city actually has a map of all the Steel Magnolias locations. That's how I was able to find so many of these. This is supposed to be Ruth Robeline's boarding house where Annelle is staying, even though she's married. And, you know, we eventually find out why she's staying here. But, yeah, I remember Trudy says at that one part that Ruth Robeline has, like, the worst luck ever and says, you know, she lost her husband and her son. She goes, when it comes to bad luck, I mean, she's right up there with Elizabeth Taylor.
So this house is the house that Annelle and Sammy get together. We see Annelle missing church. She's running late for church, so she's running out here freaking out. And that's when Dolly is picking her up and says, "You can go to my church. It doesn't matter which church you go to as long as you go to one." See Annelle running out here. This is also where she finds Sammy has a beer in her fridge and she dumps it out and says she won't have alcohol in her house. But when Dolly picks her up, Dolly's parked right here and you can see that school on the other side. So there's Annelle and Sammy's house. Well, here's our next location. Unfortunately, it's all locked up and there's nobody in the office. There's nobody here to try and get in. I was hoping, you know, sometimes with churches, they leave the doors open during the day for people to come and worship, but not this one. This is Trinity Episcopal Church. And in the movie, this was, you know, Annelle oversleeps and is late for church. And so Trudy says, you know, just go with me. God doesn't care which church you go as long as you show up. So Truvy and Annelle are sitting in the seats here. And then Clary comes in and sits next to him. And then all of a sudden, they notice Weezer walking down the aisle. And they're like, what is Weezer doing here? And then you also notice that Owen Jenkins, her old friend that Shelby has opened the can of worms from, is in the choir. He's walking down in a choir robe. So we figure out that Weezer is coming to this church to see Owen. And as she walks down the aisle, she even winks at him. Pretty funny. Because it's, you know, that is what really changes Weezer throughout this movie. She's just like such a grump. Like she says, she's been in a bad mood for 40 years. And when Shelby runs into Owen Jenkins in her town and she fixes him up, then all of a sudden Weezer's in a better mood. But it happens here. So now we're over at the Super One Foods for one brief scene back in the meat section. Pretty funny one though. So here we have the meat section. This is when we have Weezer and Clary walking through doing some grocery shopping here. And Weezer says, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that in front of Shelby. You know what I said about I'll be better off when my body gives out? I didn't mean it. And Clary says, don't worry about it, Weezer. Nobody pays attention to anything you say. Weezer says, well, I still shouldn't have said it. Even though we never see the front of the house in the movie, this was Shelby and Jackson's house. We only ever see the backyard when Shelby starts to feel ill. She's got Jackson dressed up in his Halloween costume, and she goes to inside to make a call, trying to call Jackson because she's going to have one of her fainting spells or whatever from her circulatory system. And when Jackson comes home, he hears Jack Jr. crying and everything, and then he finds Shelby laying on the steps going out to the back. So, sad moment. And of course, she ends up in the hospital, and then they have to sign off on pulling her plug for life support. That's when she passes away. So we see a close-up over here after Shelby passes away. Malin goes out to the waiting room and says, where's Jackson? Jack Jr. And Jackson says, with Aunt Fern. So we see Aunt Fern come walking out here holding Jack Jr. And Malin has been crying the whole way out here, of course. So when she gets out here, she's parked right here, and you can actually see that house right over there behind her. And then little Jackson Jr. comes running up the walkway here into Malin's arms right here on the sidewalk. And then over her shoulder, when they're getting ready to leave, you can see the church right over there. That is definitely a sadder moment of the movie because you can't help but realize that Shelby's gone because Jack Jr. is here. If she wouldn't have had Jack Jr., she probably would have lived, and so now Malin's life will carry on through Jack Jr. with Shelby. So the cemetery that they used for the movie was called American Cemetery, and it's not even like a 2-minute drive away from the Eatonton house. Crazy. In reality, could you imagine living 2 minutes away from where your child was buried? Oldest cemetery in Louisiana Purchase. See if we can find where they buried Shelby. Luckily, there are a lot of headstones because they film quite a bit there that you can match up to find it. Well, it's not too often that a cemetery actually memorializes a movie, but they did. I had found that cross that I was looking for as one of our markers, but they put one here. You can see it says Steel Magnolias. It was on this location that the movie Steel Magnolias filmed Shelby's Julia Roberts funeral. It was this scene that prompted the phrase laughter through tears, which was used to describe the movie. Sally Field, Dolly Parton, Olympia Dukakis, Shirley MacLaine, and Daryl Hannah were all in this scene. In August of 1988, the American Cemetery Association offered the use of the cemetery to TriStar Pictures at no charge. For legal reasons, the property had to be leased. Accordingly, the American Cemetery was leased to TriStar Pictures for $1, and the lease check was never cashed. Natchitoches native Robert Bobby Harling wrote Steel Magnolias. So here it was. The running theme through the movie is Shelby's health. When Shelby's getting married, she almost doesn't get married because she can't have a baby. And then we find out later, well, the doctor actually said you shouldn't have a baby, and her and Jackson end up getting pregnant anyway, putting a lot of stress on her body. She has a circulatory system issue where she produces too much insulin, and she's diabetic, and all the stress of having a baby ends up taking its toll and killing her. So we have that scene right here where M'Lynn is having a hard time accepting it, burying her young daughter. And all of her friends, as I mentioned, all the friends that we see in the movie are out here trying to console her. They all, at one different time or another, you see this gate over here. Clary and Weezer are over here at this gate, and they look back here to us and see M'Lynn in mourning at this site. So they all kind of converge back here to console her. And M'Lynn is crying, and she's saying, I can't believe my Shelby's gone. You know, what am I gonna do? My poor little girl, I could run to Texas and back, and she never could. Now she's gone. And Daryl Hannah steps in and says, well, you have to look at the bright side, Miss M'Lynn. Now she will always be beautiful. She will always be young. She will be with her king. And M'Lynn gets upset and says, I'm sorry, you'll have to forgive me if I'm not happy about that. I'd rather her be here with me. You see Sally Field, M'Lynn, standing next to this. And she gets very upset and then says, I just can't do it. I can't handle it. I just want to hit something so bad. Hit something so bad till it hurts and feels the way I do. And she's standing next to this tree. You can see that crack and everything is still there. And right then, we have this great moment where Olympia Dukakis, playing Clary, grabs Weezer, and as they're right over here, she says, come on, M'Lynn, you want to hit something? Hit this. And Weezer says, Clary, are you high? She goes, come on, M'Lynn, knock her lights out. We'll sell shirts that say, I knocked out Weezer Boudreaux. So Weezer gets upset, and actually in that scene, you can see that cross in between Clary and Weezer when they're fighting. So Weezer gets mad and storms off, and they all start laughing. It was the tension breaker that they all needed, but you can, like I said, match up this tree. Her funeral obviously was right there. Such a sad part of the movie. And you can match up that and some of this in the background. So right towards the end of the movie, the day of the Easter egg hunt, Spud takes Truvy for a ride and pulls up here, tells her to uncover her eyes, and she screams out, I'm a chain! It's Truvy's too. Her second location was right here. You can see same glass doors and everything, and those two posts right there are in the shot when they show it briefly. So now we're at the Beau Jardin Park for Easter. Now that's pretty funny because this is the Easter egg hunt. All the kids have been out hunting Easter eggs, and afterward everybody's kind of like hanging around here, and Clary decides to tell Jackson Jr. story about the evil, mean, wicked Weezer. So they're over there. She's telling this story, and meanwhile, you know, Arnell is out here with Sammy, and Arnell's pregnant. Sammy is going to be the Easter bunny today, so he's dressed up like an Easter bunny. And we have everybody out here. M'Lynn's out here. We have Drum over here. He sees Owen Jenkins and Weezer walking around and even barks at Rhett the dog. So it's a great scene. So after Clary and Jack Jr. are done with their story, she tells him, now why don't you go over there and wait for the Easter bunny? And as she comes over here, popping out from behind the tree, over there is Weezer. So Weezer comes around and says, hi Jack, you got a kiss for your old pal Weezer? And he slaps her in the face, and Jack Jr. comes running in horror away from Weezer. And we see, this park wasn't like this at the time. It was more, you know, grass and it didn't have all the gates and everything, but we see Jack Jr. run off into the arms of M'Lynn, Sally Field. And then, all of a sudden, Arnell goes into labor. And they all start freaking out. Oh my God, she's in labor! She's in labor! Get her to the hospital! So, Truvy's husband's truck is down here. They get Spud to come down here. And Spud loads up the pregnant Arnell. And they end up driving out through here. This town definitely respects its history, so it's really cool to see all these old trees still here. And that building, I'm not sure what that is, but you see it in the background of the shots, especially with like Drum, when Weezer's talking to Drum. But the vehicle actually would have driven right out through here. So you get the overhead shot from above us, seeing the truck going up this ramp, then making the left, going all the way down there, and then the bridge that's right there, they cross over to end the movie. And you see Truvy's son on his motorcycle, who really has helped no one through the whole movie, done anything Louie. He yells, "Come on, Sammy, move your tail feathers." So Sammy hops on the back dressed as the Easter Bunny, and they follow the truck right behind it all the way. And we see them crossing over there, crossing the bridge, on the way to the hospital to have a baby. Have little Shelby. They told M'Lynn if it's a girl, they're gonna name it Shelby, and then Truvy says, what if it's a boy? She said, well, I guess Shelby then. Circle of life. So from over here where the ramp is that they took off, the Easter egg hunt was right over here on this hill. Yeah, they just hid the Easter eggs up and down this hill and got tight shots of them finding the eggs.